Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening to the Young Pros Talk podcast. This is episode 20. Happy New Year. My name is Redmond. No co-host today because this is kind of spur of the moment podcast episode, but our guest today is my amazing, incredible friend, A.G., who is a poet and literally the funniest human being I've ever met. Welcome to the podcast, A.G.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming all the way
Anytime.
from wherever you came from today.
Buttfuck middle of nowhere, Oakville.
So let's just start it off. And first question I always ask everybody, just tell everybody about yourself.
So my name's A.G. It stands for my real legal, like my government. But it also stands for Armenian genocide because I am that level of Armenian. So I just want you to associate me with Armenia and Armenianness. Like when I just say A.G., that's the first thing that should come to people's mind. So I had to, do a little double meaning there, double entendre.
Sounds like a poet to me.
I dabble. So yeah, I'm an Armenian spoken word poet from Yerevan.
Now where is that in Armenia?
That's the capital of Armenia.
That's the capital of Armenia. Okay.
Come on now, you already know.
Yeah. Just for the people that don't know.
For the people that don't know,
you know?
Yerevan is the capital of Armenia. So yeah, I grew up there until I was 10, and then moved to Toronto. Lived in the High Park area for a few years.
Okay.
Then moved over to the suburbs in Mississauga. Been there for a while, and then I just recently moved out onto my own, spread my wings. My parents are literally very sad about it. But I'm currently in the Oakville sort of area. So.
Okay. Nice. So you do poetry. I saw you do a poetry slam. You were fantastic.
Thank you.
I just want to let that be on the record that I was like damn. And I was waiting because I don't know what happened. I think you got shuffled around in the order that night.
Maybe,
you were
yeah.
supposed to be. And I was like, waiting. I was like, where is she? And then you came. I'm telling you, you set the stage on fire, yo. I was like, oh my, and my friend was there.
Yeah.
And she was like, she is my favorite. And I was like,
love that.
Yes. So just tell everybody, when did you first get into poetry?
So it was, I literally remember exactly because it was June 9th of 2018.
Wow, you actually remember the date.
The actual date was the first time I ever stepped foot on a stage.
Really?
Yeah, that specific day.
So wait, had you written some poems
Yeah,
before?
I'd been writing for a few years. And I never performed. I never took it seriously. I was just kind of sad little Armenian girl with a unibrow writing poems in my basement. That was the vibe. And then I had just recently got out of a really serious relationship, and I was like, all right, this is what freedom feels like. Okay, let's experience it. So I ended up going to, Scribe, Joshua Scribe. He's a very prominent poet in the city. He was hosting an event at a different book list, Roots Lounge. And I had seen him post about it on Instagram.
Book, is that on Bathurst?
Yeah.
That's the bookstore.
Yeah,
on Bathurst
it's a really dope spot.
Yeah. Okay.
So he was hosting Roots Lounge there one day, and I just saw him post about it, and I messaged him asking, hey, what's the time, or just to clarify some details. And then I ended up going with one of my girls, and we got there, and there's very few people standing outside, and he looked at me, and he was like, are you a poet? Do you write? And I was like, I don't know. And my friend was like, yeah, she writes. I was like, bitch, why are you exposing me now? When did I give you permission? And he kind of just said, if you feel comfortable, if you feel okay, if you feel like you're feeling the vibe, you're feeling the energy, then please, if you feel inclined, please share anything that you want to kind of share. So he did a bunch of poems, and then, yeah, I shared one of my poems. And he ended up giving me really good feedback on it. He said, you got something. You should keep writing. You should keep developing that, because that's I can hear you have there's potential there.
Right.
So I let that get to my head, obviously, and I was like, Scribe thinks I'm dope. Let's go, fam. So yeah, I just kind of started writing more actively, and then any event I could find in the city, I would go. The Drake Underground, I would go. His Roots Lounge, I would go every single time. So I just started kind of immersing myself more into the scene, the community, and just felt like I was part of something.
Right.
And that was all on my own, but then also part of a bigger kind of community.
Right.
And it was just the perfect thing I needed at the time to refine myself.
Right.
Yeah, it was just it came at the most perfect time, because then I started writing about who I am, my identity, all those things, and it just kind of all meshed into the most like divine timing, because that's exactly what I needed at that time.
So you hadn't even thought about doing poetry seriously until that moment.
That until Scribe said you got something, I didn't even think of ever going up on stage ever.
Wow.
And then there was a slam on June 9th, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna go. And I went up and I performed a poem, and the crowd was like, ooh, whatever. I'm like, all right, that's how y'all feeling? Okay. I'm gonna see y'all next month,
because you got more shit to give to the people.
And then until that next slam, I was like, all right, like, I gotta start writing. And then I started writing new stuff. Then I started doing, instead of open mic, I started competing. Didn't really win much. But it's not.
But you
about
out here
winning.
doing this about the process.
Yeah,
though, right?
it's not about being first place or whatever place. It's far beyond that. It's about the energy and the vibe that you get when you're on stage, and it's about you going up in front of complete strangers that you've never met and being like, "Yo, this is my innermost, deepest thoughts,
right?
And I'm gonna share that with you."
Right.
It's the most vulnerable. It's just such a vulnerable experience, and you get this high that you can't emulate anywhere else.
Right. So when you because like I said, I saw you and you did a poem, and the amount of people that the poem resonated with was like, you couldn't see it because you're on the stage, but I'm in the back and I just see everybody, like, when people nodding their heads like yes, tell it like it is, girl, tell it. How does it feel that like your poetry can cross like cultural boundaries and it affects people in such a way? Like, how does that feel to have poetry that does that for people?
That's the best thing. Yeah. Because ultimately, my poetry is so centered around Armenia, being Armenian, my identity, those kind of renegotiating those senses of belonging and what it means to be a member of a diaspora. What does it mean to be Armenian that's trying to kind of maintain that little piece of the culture that I kind of left behind. It's all these things, and then there's all these very traditional sort of intricacies that I write about often, and then to have people that are from completely different parts of the world be like, yeah, we do that too, or we got that too, it's like that here too, and I've experienced that. Or a lot of the time it's women that are like, oh, you felt pressure to get married and all these other things. Like, I went through that, and I'm from a completely different part of the world, but it's the same. And then they come up to me and they say, oh, I felt that you put my emotions into words the way I never could articulate it that way, but that's exactly how I feel. That's what, like, to be honest, that's what being human is about. Because you're just forming a connection with somebody. Right.
And did you think that you would ever get that impact when you first started doing poetry?
No. I literally thought, I was like, these people are going to boo me, be like, baby girl, go back to your basement. Go take some more ESL classes, because you're not doing what you should be doing. Yeah, obviously it's like, it's a dope feeling. And not to be like, oh, I'm the shit or whatever, but it's just, if my poetry can have that impact, and it's a means for me to connect with people, and then through that, it's like I have all these new friendships that I've developed through this community, through this scene, because people are like, oh yeah, now we have this same kind of this means of connection, the same foundation that you just kind of reached out. You were vulnerable, you were open, you kind of laid that out, and now to reciprocate, now I'm gonna open up to you, and then that kind of creates the friendship. So it's like the best thing ever.
I feel like that's a big thing, and I don't think I haven't gotten to that point where I can be vulnerable enough to be like, you know what, I'm gonna just give this to the people. I mean, I guess the podcast is like
it's your form, yeah, for sure.
But it's not about me. I try to make sure that my podcast is not about me. Now, when I do stand-up comedy, that's a bit different, right? Because now I'm like, we're like using words to try to make people laugh. Yeah. Like, that's a crazy like concept to me, you know what I mean? And it just lets you know, like, things like stand-up comedy, poetry, that like words are so powerful
100%.
and so impactful. And when you can find a way to like simplify it, and put it in a particular form, whether it's poetry, whether it's writing, whether it's reading books or whatever, and it resonates with people, that's a crazy experience. Because I mean, the podcast for me has been like, I never thought it would inspire people, and then I have people texting me like, yo, first of all, when is the next podcast episode?
Yeah,
because
I'm one of those. Fam, when's the podcast dropping, bro? Come on now.
And the next question is always like, or not, the next thing they'll say is like, it's so inspirational. Like the people you have on, like you got a good thing going. And it's like crazy for me. I never thought that would be something. But back
that's
to
just you. Sorry to interrupt you. That's just you like executing in your passion.
Yeah, one of my passions, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I mean, we multifaceted out here. This is not no one type of thing, but no, that's one of your passions. You're executing in that area, so of course it's gonna come across as genuine. It's gonna come across as people are gonna want to gravitate towards it. That's just what it is.
But I think it's also like you don't even think about the work involved in it. Like I'm sure you imagine, like for me, like you were when I gave you the outline earlier, you're like, yo, damn, this is like. You actually spent time to do this, you know, and that's like, that's my process, you know what I mean? So like, for you, like how much time, like what's the process? I guess I should say, what's the process for like writing new poetry? Like how does that even start? Like take us through it.
Yeah, I think it depends on each poem, and it depends on the subject matter in each poem, because there's certain things that it just, when people say it comes to you, like it really just comes to you. From some sort of an emotional, some sort of a deep kind of a subconscious level. It's just something that you feel, and you feel like you have to make it into a concrete form. Because when it's just a thought, it's just something that's floating in you.
Right, it's just a thought, right.
So it's like now you're bringing this into an actual concrete piece of something. And it just happens. Like I don't have a specific process where I'm like, today from 1 to 2 p.m. I will be writing a poem.
Right.
And it's not like that. It's just like randomly at whatever time at night or whatever time during the day, I'm like, oh, this line or this paragraph, and then it just flows.
Are you like I'm a nighttime person, so like ideas come to me.
11 p.m. till 4 a.m. is literally like, as a Toronto philosopher once said, I come alive in the nighttime time. Like I really do, because that's golden hour for me. Is all those late nights is just because it's just you, and you feel like there's silence. Nobody texting you, nobody nothing, nobody bothering you.
Everybody sleep. The world is sleep.
Yeah, and it's just you, and you feel like, yo, this hour, this moment belongs to me. And then as a result, it's like this poem, these words belong to me. This is just, I don't know. It's you just have this moment at night that you can't have. Like noon is not the same as midnight. You know what I mean? This is true. It's just, it hits different.
I agree with you, because my process is, I mean, like I said, this is a spur of the moment podcast episode. This came from me saying to you last night
at almost midnight.
At almost midnight, like, yo, let's do a podcast tomorrow.
Done.
And you were like, down.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And then I was like, I got motivated, you know, to write.
Yeah.
But other thoughts come to my mind, because outside of that, I started to write a short film about an experience I recently had.
Yeah.
And I was just like, yo, it's just everything comes to me. For me, it's nighttime. It's not daytime when, and I don't know why that is. I'm trying to be more focused during the daytime.
I think it's just, if you are a certain type of person, you just are that type of person. Like I've been Googling how to become a morning person. Do you think that's gonna work, fam? Because I don't think so.
So you're not a morning person?
I'm not a morning person. Everything I do is at night. Like it just happens differently at night. Yeah,
I mean, I guess like you said, it's nobody bothering you, nobody texting you. It's like when you're actually in your own space, you know, and I feel like some of my best ideas come when should be laying down in the bed to get up to go to work, but I'm like, no, I got this idea right now, and I just need to write it down, whether it's a joke or whether it's an idea for a script, or whether it's poetry, because I write some too.
DL on the DL.
I do a lot of things, it seems. I even shared one with you that I was like, and it's random, and I have the same question for you. I want this happens for you, because it's random. Sometimes I will be thinking about something completely different, and then these words will just connect in my mind. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, you know what I mean? I have this poem I'm working on called I Am that you've read. And it didn't start off as what it ended. It was just these thoughts came to my mind. I was like, okay, I need to write this down. Let me write this down. And then I don't even think it's finished, to be honest with you. Like some people, I've sent it to a few people and they're like, it's great, I love it. I'm like, I think it's not there yet.
Only you know though.
Fair. So do you go through, like, when you have a new poem that you've written,
Mm-hmm.
like how do you know that that poem is complete, it's finished? And do you ever rewrite poems?
So rewrite, yes, or I'll just edit them, but
Mm-hmm.
that's only if I need that specific subject matter for an event or
Mm-hmm.
some sort of an open mic or something. Then I'll kind of shuffle things around. But I just think the creative process is so abstract and it's so not concrete that there's no rhyme or reason to how things happen. There's no rhyme
Right.
or reason to as to how this poem comes from the beginning kind of concept to it being finished. It's just a feeling. Like I'll just know in my gut that this is done. There's
Right.
nothing
There's
else.
no structure to it.
No
It just
structure.
happens. Right.
It just happens. Some poems are longer, some poems are shorter. Some take an hour, some take weeks, months. Like it just depends. Some things I'll just keep coming back to because I'm like, this needs more. There's more of myself that I can give to this piece.
Right. Right.
And then you just know that it's still evolving.
So how long does it take for you to write an average length poem?
Bro,
I guess?
it differs literally poem to poem. There's poems I've worked on for months. And I
Really?
still have, and they're not done.
Even today, even when
I right now have about 6 or 7 poems that are pending.
wow.
Just because I know that they're not done, but it's things will come to you as you just in your day-to-day life, and then you're like, oh, I need to add this to
Right.
quote unquote, and that's what
Right.
it is with what you just said about randomly at this specific time of the night or whatever that you know you should be doing something else, but this just overwhelming feeling comes to you that you know you need to add to something. There's something that's within you that needs to come out into some sort of a creative
right.
form,
Right.
and it like overtakes everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
there's no concrete time of okay, it takes me an hour. It's never like that.
Now, when it comes to naming your poems, do you, when you're writing, do you start with the name of the poem, or does the name of the poem come after you write sometimes, or is it a little bit of both at times?
It's never in the beginning for me.
Never in the
Never
beginning.
in the beginning for me.
Wow. So you just write and then a name.
Yeah, it just
how you
comes
title
to
it is-
you through. So usually, what I tend to do is I'll pick a word or a phrase from the actual poem, and that will be the title.
Okay.
Or it'll be like, what is the general theme or what is the message of this poem, and that'll be the title. But it's never. I don't ever set out to write. Okay, I'm gonna write a poem that's called Descendants, for example.
Right,
Like, that just
right.
comes to you later.
It just comes from reading it
Yeah.
later.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm a little different. I feel like
you set out with the intention initially.
no, not really. It's just that sometimes I'll have an idea in the form of a title,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I'll think like, okay, this is. I mean, but even the poem I told you I sent you, I am.
Mhm.
It wasn't initially titled that. You know,
Mhm.
I just feel like sometimes because the way my brain works, I have to write the thought down,
Mhm.
and then the thought is never complete.
Yeah.
But like I'll look at it, I'll read it,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll remember, oh, this is what I was thinking. And I'm trying
Yeah.
not to do. I'm trying to do that more often because one of the issues I have with myself is I'll
Mhm.
have a great idea, have a great thought, maybe a great line,
Mhm.
and I'll forget it because I won't write it down.
Yeah.
So like I don't know if that's. I don't want to say if it's old age or something. Well, I'm not.
Nah, you're not. Nah,
or
don't trip.
just but like I need to. But I've never been a person to write things down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like even last night, I talked to a lot of people last night. even even last night, I talked to one of my friends and she was like, "You should do a vision board."
Mm-hmm.
And it was somebody else that I was actually when I saw some friends
Mm-hmm.
at New Year's.
Yeah.
They're like, "You should do a vision board."
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm such a visual person in
Yeah.
my mind that like I don't need to put it like I don't need to see it like physically done. Like
Mhm.
I think I already
You see it.
see it.
Yeah.
But then she was like, well, maybe that's actually part of the problem is
Mhm.
like you see it, but you're not structuring it, and the vision board would help you structure it. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll try it. And
I
then
see the
somebody else
point.
was like, she was actually having a vision board party
Yeah, that's the thing.
at the time,
That's
and
the
I was
thing.
like, I've never done that.
I mean, at this point, I think I'm low-key having one tomorrow.
Wow, is this like another spur of the moment?
Yeah,
type of-
it's so another poet. She's her
Mhm.
name is Nels.
Mhm.
I've been on a team with her previously, and yeah, she's just very spiritual, very connected, very insightful. And she always talks about vision boards and what's the word when it's
Affirmations.
affirmations,
Mhm.
but manifestation,
Mm-hmm.
just manifesting things. So we're gonna get together, do a little plan for the year, because I think if you're intentional with what you want,
Mm-hmm.
you have a higher chance of getting that.
Getting it.
And I'm very much a visual. I need a concrete thing to be like,
Mhm.
yeah, this is this concept, this is this idea.
Right.
So that's kind of what a vision board, the idea is to me. I've never done it, but I
Right.
just feel like it's such a thing that like, what do I have to lose by trying, kind of thing.
Fair enough. That's a good point.
Might
you
as
know.
well, bro. Just do it.
This is true. I don't usually think about things like that, but I also appreciate the perspective because sometimes I'm an overthinker. I'm in my own head. And so
we both in that boat.
So like I just some things I'm like, okay, do I need to do this?
Mhm.
And like how often? Then my mind gets racing. Like how often do I need to do a vision board? Is this a monthly thing? Is this a yearly thing?
Yearly
Like,
thing.
how do you do a vision board? Am I just cutting up magazines and putting pictures on?
Magazines, pictures, quotes. It's just, what do you want to manifest into your life in the next 1 year span of time?
All right, I'll do it. I
Bro,
will do it.
what you got to lose?
I don't know. Maybe a lot. Maybe a lot of magazine paper.
Might as well. I
So,
think might as well.
Back to your experience in poetry.
We
right?
just deviated.
I gotta deviate.
My
I
bad,
gotta
my
go
bad.
back to
My
to
bad.
you because I
Mhm.
want to make sure it's all about you and not me doing vision boards.
No, this
This is the
uh,
vibe though.
Yeah,
this is the
how,
vibe.
this is how we talk.
So how much of your experience growing up, coming from Armenia,
Mhm.
moving to Canada,
Mhm.
how does that shape how you write your poetry?
It dictates everything that I
Everything.
do. It's my entire framework.
Do you feel like some things you write are more Armenian in nature, and some things are more Canadian, and some things are just a mix of both?
I don't think I have quote unquote Canadian poetry.
Mm.
I'm still struggling with that whole Canadian
Canadian-ness,
thing.
yeah.
I only feel that sense of Canadian pride when I'm going somewhere and I'm like, yeah, I got a Canadian passport. What it do, right? Like, this the cover. What you gonna say to me? Because when you're traveling in certain parts of the world,
The Canadian
they
passport
feel
is,
away,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And coming from having an Armenian passport that is nothing,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously I think only Armenians will resonate with that and know exactly what that means. But especially in places like Russia or Ukraine or anywhere in those Slavic sort of countries, Armenia, what you is Canadian passport. Okay, I'm so sorry.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden they put respect on your name. So that's the only time where I feel any type of pride towards being Canadian. But other than that, it's my entire framework, my entire concept of anything in the world is Armenian.
Okay, but you did a poem at the Slam that was about dating, or what was it called? Fuckboy or so? I can't remember the name of the
Tinder poem.
Was it the Tinder poem?
Yeah.
What's the name of that poem?
See, this is the thing. It's the Tinder poem. I don't got a title for that one because what I gotta call it? Fuckboys.
But wouldn't you say that poem is overall a Canadian experience though?
100%.
So like.
Yes, but it's just different when I write an Armenian poem. There's soul in that. There's emotion, there's soul, there's feelings, there's tradition, there's something else in that poem, and I'm different when I perform those poems.
There's more passion, you saying?
Yeah, 100%. This, it's like, I'm just fucking around at this point.
Right.
And my parents are like, you are not poet, you are stand-up comic. Like,
I've been telling you, I've been trying to get you to do stand-up comedy.
But that's the thing, is that even poetry? Like, what even is poetry? Because we're just redefining it as we go.
But I think poetry is just a form of, like, oral communication. You know what I mean? It's just one set form that you structured a certain way. You know what I mean? Like, I think stand-up comedy, in a way, is spoken word.
Yeah.
But it's more setup. You know what I mean? You can write something and it just kind of flows when it comes to poetry. But like in comedy, you have to write something and it has to go back to something you said that relates to, you know what I mean, that thing.
Like a full circle kind of moment.
Like full circle type of moment,
but
you know what I mean?
I feel like I also tend to do that in my poetry also. There's like a line in the beginning and then it kind of ties back to, it's just, there's no concrete rule of it has to sound like this.
I mean, from a basic perspective, like everything you write, anything, poetry, scripts, write books, it all has the same structure of like it has a beginning, it has a middle, it has an end. You know what I mean? And if you just have to make sure that when you're writing that out, and I think that you being a poet and you being literally the funniest human being I've ever met in my entire life.
I love how it's evolved from. I'm sorry, I gotta expose you for a second because I love how it's exposed from you, the funniest woman I ever met, to now being the funniest person. Because it's like when you say funniest woman, like that's a compliment and a diss. Because now I have whoever type of number of men that you know that are funny, I got them as a competition. But at this point, if I've also beaten those individuals, okay, now we're talking.
Listen,
if it's not funniest woman, I'm cool with it.
The fun one, you say so much funny stuff that sometimes I'm like, I have to write this down because that was so funny, and I want to remind her of how funny that was. I remember we went to that comedy show.
Oh yeah.
And it was not great. But
not great is putting it lightly.
I love that you said something. We were leaving, and you were like, "This is like the poetry scene, but worse." And I was like dying of laughter because I was like,
not a vibe.
That was pretty bad experience.
I think I also called the host a frat boy on our way out.
I think you called him a douche bro, actually.
Douche bro.
So
actually, if frat bro would have been better, because douche bro is like you just took it to another level. Yeah.
So so most of your poems are about personal experience, obviously. So all your content is about personal experience, or do you ever write poems that are not about you specifically, but you're channeling somebody else's experiences?
No. I don't think I tend to do that. I'm trying to think of if there's any piece that is of that caliber. No, because I think what I aim for my poetry to be is authentic, and the only way I can bring that authenticity across is if it's something that I'm familiar with.
Right.
I'm not gonna write about an experience that I've never been through because I don't know it. Whereas being an immigrant, being an Armenian woman, being a member of the diaspora, whatever the case may be, those are my lived experiences. That's me. Right. That's what I go through on a daily. So of course I'm going to be able to speak on it. And I just think that there's so many different, vibrant, just diverse voices in the scene that who am I to talk about an experience that isn't my own? Like somebody else can do that for me, right? And whatever the case may be, like somebody was asking me like, oh, you should write a piece about, police brutality, because I was having a conversation with them. They're like, yeah, you should write about this. I'm like, who am I to write about that? That's not
experience you've
right.
Had.
It's not an experience I've had. I don't feel like I'm qualified to speak on that. So am I qualified to speak on being Armenian and a woman and whatever? Yeah, 100%. And nobody could take that away from me. So I just think almost stay in your lane in a way. Yes, experiment. Yes, write about whatever you're feeling at that time. But I just think write about what's authentic to you, write about what you feel and what you know, and that's going to translate. And if I'm going to start trying to venture out and do all these other weird, crazy things that aren't authentic and real to me, it's going to come across, and I'm not going to have that means of connection with the audience. I'm not going to have that branch that I'm like, hey, this is what I'm feeling. Are you in the same boat with me? Because they're like, well, you're not really going through that, so who are you to speak on it?
I get you. So what is the, like, your writing is about your personal experience, but like what is the content cover? Is it usually about one specific topic, or is it a range of different things that you cover in your poetry?
I mean, a lot of it is Armenian centered, but I have found that it's very hard to do those pieces, especially, and sometimes they're successful and sometimes not as much, which is why I've kind of started trying to venture out and write pieces like that Tinder poem, or I have a piece called Skinny Bitches that tends to be like a quote unquote crowd pleaser, but that's not an Armenian centered poem. It's not a whatever, right? But it's still kind of an identity piece in a way.
It's still a personal experience, but it's not specific about the Armenian experience.
I'm just trying to kind of deviate a little bit away from the Armenian topic, and not for any particular reason other than just it can be. This is gonna sound really bad, but it almost feels like poems can be Armenian but not too Armenian, because the too Armenian pieces are kind of what my parents like, and then they send it to their friends and uncles and aunts and all those people, and then they feel it. But
that's not entirely your audience all the time.
Right. So if in an Armenian audience, I can go, okay, like let me put it into sport mode, go all the way Armenian, it's whatever. But in a Toronto crowd, it translates sometimes, but not fully when I'm going too far. You know. But I mean?
Think your one poem, I think it's called Cookbooks.
Cookbooks, yeah.
That is something that I can tell you wrote from your own personal experience, but it resonated with people and cross different cultural backgrounds. You know what I mean? So like, even though, as we talked about earlier, you can write about that personal experience, but it resonates with people.
Yeah.
And me, even I probably shed a tear. I won't even lie. I was just like, I was like so proud. I was like, that's my homie. Like, I just want to be like, that's my homie. Yes. That poem was
you
fire.
me always. You
And
me
it was
always.
like one of my favorite. Like, I just loved just also the delivery you had, the passion and the presentation of it.
Appreciate
And
you.
just, I'm telling you, everybody, if you were in the audience and you seen all the people like nodding their heads, like, you know, and I know that's something you don't recognize in the moment because you're focused on, because I think you had like 4 minutes and you got to get it out.
You have 3 minutes. 3
Oh, is it 3 minutes?
Seconds, yeah. So, and I'm notorious for getting time penalties.
Really?
That's just my shit. Like, Armenians are never on time, so I don't really try to be on time with my poetry either. I always get a time penalty. So,
but like, sorry to cut you off.
No.
But I guess for the slam aspect of that, it matters. But in the like the reality, like just doing a poem, does that time thing matter that much? Especially if people is feeling the vibe and they you know.
No, I mean, it depends with your intention of what you're going into, because I've never aspired for this poetry thing for me to be, I need to get all these accolades, I need to win this slam and that slam, and that's dope for those people. Like, I have a lot of friends in the community that do that, and they're wonderful at it, but I just never set out with that intention, and I knew that my niche of poetry is not gonna be, oh, I won this title and that, you know what I mean? Like, that was never my intention. I just went out with, I want to do this and I want to share this. And if I get a time penalty, I get a time penalty.
Right.
If I don't, I don't. It's kind of whatever.
I mean, you got a time penalty, I think, that
100.
And I think the audience booed that. They were like, boo.
Yeah, like,
you know,
why y'all taking a point away? Yeah, but
you know,
see, that's so much more important. Okay, I got half a point taken away.
Because that resonated. It's the fact that it resonated with, I mean, you were doing a slam and there's judges and they got to follow within the criteria and whatnot. But I think for the people, it meant so much more for you to be able to get through those, you know, fuck the time and just get through the poem, because
100.
you know, you have something, you have a valuable voice and experience. And that experience, as we continue to say, it resonates with people.
100%.
So I think that, like, slams are cool, but I'm like, if you was like, today, fam, I am doing a poetry thing, like, just, I'm gonna read my poetry, we're gonna have some drinks, there's gonna be some Armenian food, you know.
I gotta make my homies some Armenian food. I like how you slid that in there.
I've been doing this for a minute, you know.
Okay, yeah, I see. Yeah, this is almost like it's not your first rodeo. Let me get this on a record. I will be cooking you Armenian food in 2021. All right?
Okay,
let me put that on record right now.
Can you say that again, please?
I, A.G. the poet, promise and wholeheartedly swear to cook the homie Redmond Chambers some Armenian food this calendar year. All right? Get that in writing. I will sign it. Whatever you want. Get me an affidavit. Whatever you need. I got you on that. All right? I'm not going to flop on it. I'm not going to pull no Toronto thing.
Not saying I've been waiting, but
I know.
I've been waiting.
And I've been being shady, too, because I always send you pictures of things I make. And you're like, yo, who eating this if not me? Why? Who's getting this food? And I'm like, oh, my bad, bro. I promise I will. 100%. My bad.
But yeah, if you did a show and it was just you just reading your poems, I think that would be like fantastic.
Have
you thought about that?
That's a feature. Like, I've done a few of those, but it's like there has to be a space and there has to be an opportunity to do that.
You wouldn't like orchestrate?
Do it on my own?
Yeah, orchestrate it on your own. Just be like, you know what? I got some poems. I don't get to share as much because I have to do a certain amount within the slams and whatever. And you want to be able to get more content. Would you just be like, you know, barring like obviously pandemic?
Yeah, that's the thing. I feel like it's so limited.
But like
now,
pandemic, right? Like, would you be like, you know what? I want to do a little event. It don't have to be a lot of people. Small little venue. You know what I mean? Just doing my poems. There's food. There's good vibes. Like, would you do that?
I would 100% do that. And it sort of crossed my mind, but I just never had the right place or the right concept to go about it. Hopefully, when this is all over, I would do that. There's a couple like really dope Armenian venues. Obviously,
because you know I'm gonna be there.
Oh, 100. If I tell you like, yo, there is I'm doing a poetry event in the in the Appalachian Mountains, you'd be like, all right, we hiking today. Like, let's go, homie. Let's do some poetry. Like, you're the realist. Obviously, I know you're going to be there.
I appreciate that. You already know because you didn't even think I was going to come to the slam.
No, deadass, I didn't. And then I was at the bar getting a drink, and I get a tap on my shoulder like, yo, A.G. And I'm like, what? Because it's you. I feel like you always say this. It's such a Toronto thing when people say they're going to do something and then they flop. That's just such a cross Toronto, GTA, every type of area thing that people just tend to do that. So the fact that you follow through, that's so rare.
Yeah.
So
I feel like it's important to me, and I'm happy that because honestly, I had never been to a poetry slam before. Yeah. So I was like, I'm not really doing anything. Mm-hmm. I got the time, like
I got time today. I got time. I got all kinds of time.
I got the time. So the way my mind works is, if I got the time, why not? Like, I'm not just gonna do, because I'm not, I'm not gonna say that those people, that Toronto culture of like being flaky and stuff, I'm not gonna say that those people are doing nothing, but like usually, and I can say that maybe sometimes it's the feels too, because sometimes you don't want to go. Like, I have moments like that where it's like, oh, come through, blah blah blah, and I'm like, oh, I'm not feeling that great today. Like, had a bad week, work was killing me, or whatever else was on my mind that's happening, and I've just been the person to try to fight through that and show up anyways.
Yeah, you're a man of your word.
I try my best. I try my best. Let the record know for my future person.
I'm not gonna expose you. I'm really not.
But so when going back to your poetry, it's all about you. What's some of the challenges when trying to write a poem? Do you have any? Or
writer's block is real, fam.
Yeah?
Writer's block is real. And especially because, I don't even really fully consider myself a writer, or it's so hard to...
Why is that?
It's so hard to pen yourself as that. It's so hard to give yourself that title.
But I feel like, and this, I don't want to, because we're homies, right? I feel like you're kind of selling yourself short, because you have a whole, that we'll talk about in a minute, you have a whole book of poems that has been published. So like,
but by myself.
Yeah, but it don't matter if it was by yourself or not. It's the fact that it's on a piece of, it's in a book. It's there. It's concrete. People, you were selling them at the event. Yeah. The bottom. You signed one for me.
I did.
And I keep it next to me all the time because I look through it. So I think that, why even though you've done all of that, why do you not think that you're a writer? Because this shows that. The proof is there.
I don't know what it is, and I've talked to a lot of people in the community that also feel that way. It just feels like a very substantial title to give yourself, and as somebody that you always want more, you just feel like you haven't earned it yet. I feel like I haven't earned that title yet.
And I get that. I understand, because, like I said, we know each other very well. Yeah. We talk often. We have a lot of the same thoughts about our creative process. But the difference between you and well, not even a big difference, because I have it's here. It's on. You can go to iTunes or
Apple Podcasts,
whatever, and you can listen to my podcast.
100.
You have a book. You know what I mean? Like, people can read that, and I think sometimes you got to be like. You just got to acknowledge the fact that, like, yes, once you get to a certain stage, maybe you don't have as much, like, recognition or accolades that you would like. But, like, once you have that, done certain amount of things, I think at some point you got to be like, yo, I'm a writer. Yeah. And I think I had that same issue where, like, I'd be like, I'm not a podcaster. I'm just a guy that's just
doing a podcast.
Exactly, right? And they'd be like, no, you're a podcaster. Yeah. And you need to own that.
For sure.
So I understand exactly where you're coming from, but I feel like when I got that book, when you signed it for me, when my homie who you signed a copy for her as well, and she loved it, you know what I mean? Like, I think at that point, and the way, like I said, the way your poetry resonates with people from different backgrounds, I think you got to be like, yo, I am this.
Give yourself
because
props.
People.
It's
feel
hard
that
though.
That's you.
I get that. It's dope that you get that validation externally, but I just think it's never about that external validation. I could have a million people that are like, yeah, you this and that, unless you feel that internally. And like I feel proud of myself that I was able to put myself out there, to be vulnerable with crowds and all those things. But yeah, it's just hard to come to that confirmation within yourself and to give yourself that title. And I think especially for me, as weird as it sounds, English not being my first language, I also feel a way about, well, who am I to write anything in this foreign tongue to me, and for it to have any type of validity or meaning, because this is not even, I wasn't born to operate in this language.
I get
you know
that.
what I mean? So
Yeah,
I mean, now obviously I do think in English, but it still feels weird. Like I'm not a native English speaker, so how all of a sudden I'm reading poems to native English speakers, and they're like, "Oh, this is great." You know what I mean? I don't know. It's a very weird thing to reconcile within yourself.
But I want you to think about it like this, because this is me trying to formulate the thought. You know what I mean? Like
break it down.
English just tends to be the medium, and where you are expressing yourself, you know, to the masses.
Yeah.
And if people, I'm sure a lot of people who are absorbing your work aren't, English is probably not their first language either.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that I get what you're saying. I mean, English is my only language. You know, you speak 3 languages, right? So I mean, if I went to, but you know what, I can see where you're coming from, because if I went to France and I learned to speak French and I wrote something in French,
and you're telling Pierre how to, like, come on.
Yeah, I get you. I understand.
You know what I mean?
I get you, but I think that I do think that that's the perception you have, obviously, of yourself, because I think everybody else, including myself, would think, yo, you know, you're a writer that's Armenian, right? Like Armenian is who you are.
Yeah.
But for me, as a person who's absorbing your content, you know, I know that fact, but I don't think as if I don't deserve what you give me, because it's not, you writing it in a language that's not originally your own.
It's not even that you don't deserve. It's just like I'm not qualified to do that.
I see, but I mean, like, English is just a language, though. You know what I mean?
But I see
like,
what you're saying about it just being a medium, and
yeah,
it just so happens to be a common medium.
You know what I mean? Like, it's the medium of North America. You know what I mean? So, like, I think that you're adapting to that environment, because obviously you have to. You know, you have to thrive when you go to a place wherever the language is different, and to navigate yourself successfully. And I think you've done that successfully.
Thank you.
Because you know, I like the book. I read cookbooks to a friend right before, as I was finishing up the outline, as I said, because it was last minute. And she loved it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I loved it. I was like I was laughing so hard at that.
But that's my parents being like, "You're not the poet."
Which I agree, but I think no,
we gonna be transcending mediums.
But you're both.
I mean, I hope so. I hope, like, we've talked about it at length.
For sure, we have.
And obviously, I'm open to that, 100%. Just because, again, it's another means of connection. Why not?
Absolutely.
I mean, you also, on paper, have fully penned me as the funniest person you've ever met. So I feel like
I wrote that down. Yes.
Yeah. Can I get Redmond Chambers, like, signed right here? No, I mean, if this is out there, this is a concrete piece of proof that you feel this way. And you told me yesterday, you're doing a disservice to people by not doing stand up.
I think so.
I have you, so, like, I feel like this.
And I think there are a lot of people, and this is no, like, disrespect to people who are doing that. I think there are a lot of people that are doing things that are being successful at it, but
they ain't that good.
They're not that good.
Yeah, the little frat bros at that event you took me to, their confidence was through the roof. I'm like, my guy, who told you you're funny? Like, who lied to you, sir? Because we out here, you know what? This is, I don't know if this is an immigrant thing or what it is, but there's just this constant self-doubt that is ingrained in you. And I'm just thinking, like, yo, Ethan, like, where do you get that confidence, Ethan? Like, please tell me, Jeffrey, because I just want to know.
I mean, I think, yeah, because I think from, like, the community I grew up on the east side of Detroit, there, I wouldn't say that I was always funny, you know what I mean? And I was always smart and all of that. I just think because of the environment I grew up with, I had nobody
to
cultivating.
validate that.
Yeah. I had nobody cultivating that except for my aunt. My aunt knew early. She was like,
you the shit.
she was like, you're so like. She would try to tell me like, oh, come visit her. She lives in D.C. area. Come visit her, and do a comedy camp. And I just never did it because like, as a kid, like, you don't see the value in your own talents
100%,
yet.
100%.
You know, so like you're this kid and you're like, oh, like comedy camp, like all I hear is camp. It's like you know, and now looking back, I wish, and I think that's an issue with society in general. Is like there's not enough of that. Seeing what a child naturally is talented in and just cultivating that, you know, because I think that maybe like now looking at my life, not that my life is bad or anything, but like
you do all right for yourself.
But like there are things that I am naturally good at that if it would have been developed, I would have that structure and practice to be able to execute it properly.
100%.
Whereas now I'm learning and trying to figure out how to do that. So now I'm at a disadvantage for those people, from those people who did go. Start early. Somebody saw that, cultivated, or they decided to just take a class or whatever.
Right.
And then they got at pragmatic side of things. Yeah. You know?
But I mean, you, like, again, we speak on a pretty often basis, but you're always working at your craft. I feel like every time I talk to you, you're in a new class. You're doing this, you're doing that. You're doing all these things on the side to develop those things. And it's no such thing as too late. You know what I mean? Now that you recognize those talents within yourself, you're cultivating it. You're a grown-ass man. You're cultivating that. You're validating those things within yourself. And if you need a homie to validate you, I got you on that too. But no, it's like at a certain point in your life, you do those things for yourself. And it's like, what better time to do that than at a peak of a new year, right? To be like, you know what? Yeah, this is what I want to kind of focus on. I want to give more energy, give more effort to this avenue, to this craft, and develop that.
Did you do you feel like you had somebody outside of the experience you said? Well, back up actually. The poem you did. Do you remember the poem? The first poem you did? No, the one you did at different book lists.
Yes.
Do you remember the poem?
Yeah.
What was the name of it?
Name of it. I don't even think it had a title, but it was like a little bit of a love poem. I feel like it was a little bit of
everybody's
a love
gonna
poem.
feel that.
Yeah, it was a love poem, and I had just gotten out of a relationship, and I went on the stage and I said, "This is a love poem, but it's not about the person I just got out of a relationship with."
But was it though?
It wasn't.
Oh, really?
It wasn't about him. No.
So was it about like your perception of love? Like I mean,
yeah, it was just like a little.
Is this poem in your book? It's not in your book.
It is actually.
I might have read it.
Hold on, let me just give me a second. I'll pull that up. It was like a very Armenian centered, because that's kind of when I started.
Was it Armenian love, or was it the Armenian love?
Yes, an Armenian love story.
An Armenian love story. I saw that, and I love. I saw it under the title you wrote.
One I've never had.
Yeah, but
one I've never had, but I feel like this is what it would feel like. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the poem I did, because at that time I was like, well, this is my kind of broken concept of love now, and now I want to kind of imagine and conceptualize what it would actually be like if it had been the proper way. Right. So yeah, that wasn't an actual real. Like, it wasn't about an actual person. It was like a concept. Concept.
So that would be a poem you would say that's not. That you wrote,
yeah,
that
I
wasn't
guess
based on personal experience.
But
though.
You see, I feel like it is about personal experience, because I'm so surrounded by that constant pressure, my parents, to be like Armenian husband, Armenian kids, Armenian. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people in different cultures feel that pressure all the time.
And I have poems about that, and I've had women come up to me and be like, I have that pressure.
Wow.
Constantly, I face. They've grown out of that whole vibe now, but yeah,
But you out here inspiring the masses still, though.
I mean, I do what I can, Pep. I do what I can.
So, a couple of questions for you about your book. So, first question is, what made you even decide to put together all these poems, like, and you was like, you know what, I'm just gonna put it in a book and give that to the people?
A couple things actually. My friend Nels, I'm gonna shout her out all day, every day. She was working on a book at the time, and I think she even had one already out. Check her out, BT Dubs. But yeah, she was working. And she's like, you should do this. You should just have a book. And I wasn't doing it to sell. Like, I'm not trying to be on Heather's pick or anything like that. I just want a concrete. Take a shot every time I say concrete in this podcast. I just wanted an actual physical representation of what I had been doing for that last little year and a half, 2 years. I felt like I was so submerged in the poetry scene, and it had become a part of who I was, and I associated that as now a part of my identity. Like, yeah, I do this on the side. Right. It was like something I would kind of brag about or mention to people, and it was dope. So I was like, I want to just have this thing for myself, that is a representation of that, and I worked on it for a while. I was kind of trying to rush and finish it by finals, and my mom helped me a ton, and I did the illustrations, and she helped me with those. Like, I just wanted something that was a physical representation of, I've been doing this poetry thing, and this is what I've been working on, and this is just like the fruit of my labor, basically. That's kind of what it was.
And I loved it.
Thank you.
I told you.
I appreciate you.
I was so happy to get that copy. Now, the title of the book is Child of the Mountains. Now, tell us about the title, what that title means, and how you came to name the book that.
Yeah. So I felt like the book was a definitely a representation of my life at the time, and just things I had been going through, and just experiences that I had had, and I wanted the title to be a representation of who I am also. And Child of the Mountains is a reference to a mountain that is currently actually in modern day Turkey, but it's historically an Armenian mountain. It's Noah's Ark landed on Mount Ararat in the Bible. If you're
biblical,
familiar with that, shout out to Adam and Eve. But so it was a reference to that, and it's just so synonymous with Armenia and with the land. And I grew up, our house our apartment, you would wake up and on the balcony right in front of you was Mount Ararat. So I just always grew up with the association that this is ours, this is our mountain, this is such a huge part of our identity.
So you can see the mountain from your apartment?
From your apartment.
That's gonna be incredible.
It's dope, bro.
Wow.
It's like you can't explain that. There's nothing else that can emulate that feeling. And it just feels away because now it's not on actual geographic Armenian soil. But yeah, it's as Armenians we definitely still hold that as sacred to us. It's still a huge part of who we are. And I feel like Armenia raised me. I feel like Armenia gave birth to me. Armenia raised me. Armenia molded me into who I am. And I'm here, but I'm still,
in Armenia.
That's still me, yeah.
Yeah, I got you.
So I wanted it to be a representation and a shout out to my roots.
The Detroit has not left me either.
Yeah, yeah, we know. We were just driving about like, yo, 12, what you doing? We know.
So,
we gotta tell the people what I call you, though. We gotta tell the people what I refer to you as. What's my recent nickname for you? I want to expose that a little bit.
I don't remember.
What you mean? Light-skinned Detroit Tyler Perry? That's my nickname for you.
That's like a title.
Listen, just give me royalties for your book. But I mean, that's just like another example of you are where you come from, in a way.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I definitely think that where you come from shapes you.
100%.
And even if that experience may not have always been the greatest experience, which in my case was not, right? But you get to a point and you recognize that because you've gone through so much, and when you share that with people and then they're like, yo, you're here though. You know what I mean? Like, you're here. That means you can do literally anything, man, because you've come from somewhere that was not conducive of really your growth. Success. Yeah, exactly. And the fact that you are here now and you're doing a podcast, you're doing all this other shit, you doing the poetry, that means like, yo, and you still have moments though. You struggle, like, all the time. You still have lows, and for me in my life, I feel like the lows tend to all come at the same time. You know what I mean?
When it rains, it pours.
Like I remember one time I lost my job and broke up with my girlfriend, and then like a family member was sick, and it was just like,
when it rains, it pours.
Oh, and then I was sick, and you know what I mean? Like, there was a lot of stuff.
I didn't know you at that time. I didn't know you.
No,
at that
we
time.
did not know each other at that time. that was
But that was like the
rough.
universe's ultimate timing, where like you would have come out of that situation better, stronger,
Yeah.
with learning new things and with an internal growth
Yeah.
kind of a mentality
Right.
after that, and then we meet, and then
But as we talked about, everything happens for a reason, because
100%.
sometimes like you don't see it in the moment,
no,
and then something else will happen, which is what happened. I remember when I lost my job, and I was having that relationship
yeah,
and stuff. I got out of that relationship. All that stuff happened, but what was good for me? The podcast started
Yeah.
to pop. I was producing content quite frequently for me because
Yeah.
I was doing it infrequently,
mhm,
and it was just, and the content was getting better.
yeah,
I was out being me. I was taking that time to be me,
mhm,
and just do what I do, which is like connect with people,
yeah,
and then vibe with them, and then be like, yo, I would love to have you on the podcast. You're not
Mhm.
interesting. You're dope. Let's do it. And sometimes it takes time. You know what I mean? Like there have been people that I've been talking to, that it's been like a year
Mhm.
or so, or like just us continuously like, yo, what's good? You know,
Mhm.
how you doing? Just like, cause I'm very supportive. Like all of the
yeah, you are.
all of the people I've had on my podcast, I try my best to keep in touch.
Mhm.
You know, like the last few podcast episodes, like Hannah, which is the last one, I talk to her every day.
Yeah.
You know, Hearing Movement. I just saw him last week. I bought some. I got the hat on. You know, I'm always repping.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Carthy from Lit Sauce. I
Mhm.
bought some. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm always
Yeah, it's a
in
means
those
of connection
spaces.
for
Yeah,
you.
it's for me, and that's when I tell them when I'm connecting. I love to have you on the podcast, but us connecting is not just about the podcast.
No, it's
You know what I
deeper
mean?
than
Like it's deep. Like whatever you got going on, and
Mhm.
they'll message me. Actually, George from here messaged me.
Yeah.
You know, Happy New Year, blah blah blah. Yo,
Yeah.
the podcast is about to blow.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And I was like, yo, everything with you is about to. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
we keep that vibe, and it's rough to say that though, because 2020 was like 20. Like what is it? Can we just erase that year?
Yeah, let's not.
Like can we just? It goes from 2019 to 2021, right? Like can we just skip that year?
100.
So like, you know, it's anyways, it's good to be able to have that background of
Mhm.
what you thought was rough, to realize, oh, this shapes who you are.
Yeah.
As for me, doing a podcast, for you as a poet, and things like that, and just using that experience to share with the masses.
Yeah.
And then you realize how many people experience that.
For sure,
you know?
as a means of connection. But I want to go back to what you were saying just now about how you had gotten from this really rough spot, and then you kind of channeled that into you doing the podcast and you kind of focusing on yourself and
Mhm.
doing all these things.
Mhm.
And it's like that's so wild, because it was the same kind of situation for me,
Mhm.
where you think it's like the lowest point in your life, all
Mhm.
these things. And truly that's kind of what it was for me too. At the time when I started poetry, was I had literally just taken my life and flipped it
Mhm.
upside down completely, and it was in a completely different space that I had been a few months prior, and I just chose to channel that energy
Right.
into poetry, into myself, into taking care of myself, into seeing, okay, what do I want? What do I want to do? How do I want to spend my energy and my time? And that's when your purpose, your passion, that's
Mhm.
when those things shine.
They shine.
And
yeah.
that's literally what happened with you too. You're like,
Mhm.
I was in this spot. Okay, now I'm gonna do this
Mhm.
this poetry or this podcast thing, and it's you like executing in your passion and your
Mhm.
purpose, and that just happens when you're placed in that type of a pressure situation.
So do you when you having those moments like that, do you just work? You just wrote on poetry, or do you I feel like it's stages. You're reflecting. You're like
Mhm.
why does life suck?
Yeah.
You know.
It do be like
and
that
and
sometimes.
then you'll have a conversation with somebody,
Mhm.
and they'll be like, "Yo, get up, go take
Yeah.
a shower,
Do that.
and
Yeah.
and take a walk, and get back to
Mhm.
grinding." You know, you got so much. Do you go?
Yeah,
do
I
that?
think you're allowed to give yourself grace. You're allowed to give yourself time to process and to cope with whatever
Mhm.
emotion that you're going through. And you're allowed to have a rough day. You're allowed to have a rough whatever period of time. But at the end of the day, you got to let yourself know that, no, I'm not residing in this emotion. I'm not residing in this
Mhm.
state of
Mhm.
mind. I'm choosing to do something about it. So yeah, I'll mope around. I'll I'll be sad for a little bit about something, but then I'm like, no. And then yeah, a lot of times it is a poem,
Mhm.
because those really intense emotions, whether it's sadness or whatever it may be, even really, really happy, those intense emotions, that's what creates poetry, because that's what kind of catapults you into some sort of a thought, and then it kind of takes off from there.
Okay.
So it usually, like a lot of the, I'm gonna say my love poems. My love poems, a lot of them are from a sad place. Like it's I be in my feelings, and then that kind of becomes a poem.
Becomes a poem,
So,
and then it resonates with other people when you
yeah.
share it. Okay. So we about to go into like a rapid fire speed round questions, and
Hit me.
then you will do a poem for us.
Ooh, okay.
I have a special request.
Okay.
You already know what it is, but I will tell
know
you.
what it is.
I will tell the people later. So
Okay.
let's go. You ready?
I'm ready. Hit me.
What is your favorite poem that you have written?
Ooh, this is not rapid because I need time to process.
Go ahead. Process it.
Okay, there's. Oh my God! I think A Letter to My Future Daughter is one of my favorites.
Wow.
And I've been performing a poem. I'm not sure if people are familiar, but there's a lot going on in Armenia. A pretty politically volatile time.
You were at Nathan Phillips Square.
Yeah, I was at
poem,
Nathan
right?
Phillips Square at a vigil, and I did a poem. And it was for Artsakh mothers. Artsakh is the disputed territory that was in Armenia. So there was a war going on from end of September up until pretty recently. So. I mean, that's a very emotionally heavy one for me, so I'm gonna have to shut that one out right now.
Okay.
Just because that's really recent and
That's
I felt that. Yeah, I felt that one.
I get that. Do you have a favorite poet?
Ooh, I have so many favorite poets.
Wow. Just list them.
I mean, okay, my girl Nell's amazing, incredible poet. Joshua Scribe, gotta shout him out. He's phenomenal. Sheila Sadr, she's from the West Coast, I think California area. Beautiful poet. She's of Iranian heritage, Iran descent, yeah. And she does a lot of like those softer kind of emotional sort of pieces, and I love that. I'm trying to think. Desiree McKenzie, Shelley Grace, they're my fellow teammate. Silva, my fellow teammate. There's a lot of talent in the city.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talent in the city. But those off the top of my head, please don't feel away if I missed anyone.
No,
but
you got so many because you got
off
so
the
many.
top of my head, those are some
so you get
phenomenal.
inspired by
Ifrah
so
Hussein,
many.
come on now.
Yeah, she's fire.
Yeah, come on now. That's yeah.
This is a long question, so I don't know why I put this in like the speed round area. Is there anybody in the world, dead or alive, that you wish you could share your poetry with? Someone that doesn't already know of your work.
Ooh. Yeah, actually. And the first person that comes to mind is actually my grandma. My mom's mom passed a while back, but she's the type of a person, and I'm not gonna cry, but she's the type of person that would always, ever since I was little, she would always tell me like, you know, you're special and you're smart and you're capable of so much, and then when I got older and I would go back to Armenia and visit, she would always say like, take care of yourself and focus on yourself and all these things, and I wish you could see that I'm doing this and I'm paying homage to our culture, to our traditions, to her upbringing, and I feel like that would mean a lot to her.
Wow,
to see that.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
That's beautiful. Yeah. What any like celebrities or anybody else?
I mean, if Idris Elba wants to come through and kick it, like if Winston Duke wants to come through and kick it and hear some poetry, I'm not gonna say no. I'm not gonna say no.
All right. Do you have all your poems memorized?
A majority of them, yeah.
A majority of them.
Of any ones that I've performed, because the process of practicing to perform a poem
is you got to memorize.
You got to memorize it, so you're just reciting that poem back and forth, like constantly for hours on end. So yeah, most of them I do have memorized.
Okay, and I'm gonna ask you two questions. Well, three actually, and then you'll go into your poem.
Ooh, okay.
What do you want people to take away from your poetry?
Wow, what do I want people to take away from my poetry? I just want them to get to know me better, get to know where I'm coming from, get to feel if there's a connection, if there's a common ground, if they relate to my content, if they relate to my experiences, and somehow apply that to their life. If that somehow explains something that they were feeling or sheds a light on something that they haven't really thought about. I just want it to be a means of connection. I love when people reach out to me or see me at shows or whatever. I mean, it hasn't been a show in a minute.
Yeah, I know,
but back in the day, you know, when people would come up to me and say that, and the fact that it impacts them in some way, to me, that's worth everything. Like, I I don't care about accolades or titles or any of
Right.
stuff.
It's
As
about how
long
you
if
impact
somebody
people.
comes up to me and says, "Hey, like I love that. Thank you so much for sharing, and
Mhm.
I feel it because X Y Z."
Mhm.
And I've even had people come up to me and be like, "Yeah, I write, but I've been shy to perform, and you inspired me to now go and keep writing or keep
Right.
performing." Like, come on, what else can I ask
That's
for?
true. That's true.
dope.
Wow. Wow. And I know we talked about it a little bit. Are there any plans to do other creative work outside of poetry?
Yeah, I mean, I'm open at
Mhm.
this point. I feel like this is the mindset that I'm going into this year with. I'm open to whatever the universe wants to bring my way, whatever it wants to,
Mhm.
whatever it wants me to be a part of will happen.
Mhm.
Whether that's poetry events, podcasts, whatever it may be. I mean, outside of singing, I'm pretty much open to all types of creative mediums.
Okay,
It's
I
just
got you.
whatever comes my way.
You got a lot of talent, so I'm sure there's some other
Stand up
things.
comedy.
Stand up comedy has got to happen.
We gotta
It's
go
got to
make
happen.
fun of some people.
Yeah.
We gotta go roast some Ethans. Yeah.
Trick question.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really a trick question, but would you prefer to be the first in something or the best?
Ooh. I mean, I'm trying to think. Probably the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not the first Armenian poet. There's people, and they're all.
Right.
I know a few of them, or I've read a few pieces here and there, and they're great. But I want to be known as like, oh yeah, the best Armenian poet. You know what I mean? I want to be like it's the way that Ifra
It
Hussein
resonates
is,
different. Yeah.
and not to diminish other Somali poets, but Ifra Hussein is like the Somali poet.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? At least to me.
Mm-hmm.
So if people can associate me with being the Armenian poet,
then it's all good.
that's dope. I'm good on that.
You
I'm
sold.
I'm solid.
Okay. So, time has come.
Okay.
You will perform a poem for us.
I'm down.
And the poem that I've asked, and my friend said as well, is the poem Cookbooks.
Okay.
So, yeah, whenever you're ready to go, just pretend I ain't here.
Pretend you ain't here.
I've heard this poem before. I think it's fantastic.
Thank
it's
you.
beautiful. It's inspiring. It's so many good words that I can't even think of right now. Okay, like that's how I felt. Even I felt that.
Thank
You know how people put those quotes on Instagram? Somebody said this.
Yeah.
I felt that.
Yeah.
That's your poetry. Okay.
I love it. Thank you.
Whenever you're ready.
I know it by heart, but just to be safe, so that I don't stumble, I'm gonna just read off.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll read off my phone. So this poem is called Cookbooks. I feel like this poem does need a better title.
Yeah, you can.
But this is what we're talking about with titles. It's hard. Anyways,
it's the poetry that matters, not the title
not
of the poetry,
title?
right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So, anyways, working title. It's called Cookbooks. White woman writes cookbook about her 12-day tour across Armenia and Iran. Penguin Publishing calls it an enlightened view and a fresh perspective. Says this book will take you on a culinary journey. Explore the vibrant flavors of the region. Heather picks it. Oprah adds it to her book club. Jessica Smith is now a best-selling author. Still goes home and only uses salt. I flip through the pages, want to ask Jessica if she knows what Nangu Namus means, if she plans on using Western Union or MoneyGram to send the proceeds of the book sales to every city and village she stole from. Perhaps she may consider wire transfers. Wonder if this book would sell if it had my name on it, because I actually know how to cook. I love to cook, so I take Armenian mythology. Centuries of survival, a 2,000-year-old alphabet blended in a KitchenAid. Make it more palatable for their tongue. They still ask me for my hummus recipe. I failed to mention that the first ingredient is not being them, that I cannot teach Achkachap, that this skill is generational, the universe is intentional, and every one of the cells in my body has already done this before, that my ancestors carried passion and tradition within their fingertips, that my soil be the seasoning that makes apricot stones blossom, that pomegranate seeds fall from my eyes like teardrops. Decorate dishes like rubies decorate my mother's wrist. This taste is not foreign. In elementary school, when I get tired of kids asking me, ew, what is that? It smells. I ask my mom for a kanarati sandwich. She tells me, Bales, you will not like it, it's disgusting. She knows my palate has traveled. It has more stamps than a post office, but she wants me to fit in. So she hides the cardamom. throws the sumac to the wind. I wonder where the flavor is in this bread. I learned my lesson. When my coworkers ask me, "What's for lunch? It looks interesting," I say, "Bitch, don't worry about it." Now, I wrap everything in our lavash, envelop every morsel because it has withstood both genocide and exile. When my people carried on their back, let it dry in the desert sun, then sprinkled it with water to watch it come alive again. And I guess that's how we all are. Because who else can be so insignificant but so proud other than an Armenian? Who else can take flour and water, bake it in a toni, turn it into a symbol of survival? So Maidik was right. Armenian moms are always right. How she sees my future within coffee grounds, spreads yogurt over all my wounds because it has been healing us for generations. So I know that her touch is medicinal. I know our food is medicinal. And that's cookbooks.
Wow.
Thank you, bro.
Wow. Oh, I shed a tear a little
Oh
bit.
my
I was
God,
trying my
bro.
best. That was so beautiful.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you for sharing that poem with us.
Anytime.
A.G., everybody. Thank you for joining me. Please, tell everybody how they can find out more about you, your poetry.
Yeah,
you
you
know.
can find me at on Instagram at A.G.The. And I'm on Facebook, A.G. Just, real creative. First name A.G., last name A.G. Capitals.
All capitals,
Just
all
trying
caps.
to make it really simple for the Armenians. Because, like those fob, like, aunts and uncles, like, I hear about these poets, let me find. And then they're like, they don't know. So I was like, A.G., find me. That's
all
it.
right. And if you guys would like to connect with us on a podcast, you can find us Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. It is Young Pros Talk. If you would like to ask us any questions or have comments, email us at youngprostalk@gmail.com. And please rate us on iTunes. Leave a comment. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for having me, fam.